In this program here, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new project that's going to do nothing more than get the area of a rectangle by getting the length and the width. So we're going to start by creating a new project, and we're choosing empty project. Now, don't just choose the top one that's here. And if you have all languages here, then you're going to want to make sure that you change it to C++, and you want an empty project. You can skip all these other things here. They have specific purposes, but for our class, we're going to be using empty project. So we're going to click here, and I'm going to call this area of rectangle. And notice I have place solution and project in the same directory. You don't have to, but it's much easier to find the file once you've created it if you have it all in the same one. So it will do it. If you have Visual Studio 2019 and it takes a real long time to do something, or it sits there and says not responding, just sit there and wait and it will come back in. So now we have source files. So this is what's different than Xcode. I'm going to click on new item, and I want a C++ file. Notice it lets me name it here. So I'm going to call this area rec. And because I do this often, I'm going to put the date here. Maybe I'll put it afterwards. And I'll click on add. And so we have a blank thing in here. So the very first thing, I'm not going to do it because of time-wise, is you need to, I'll do a little bit of it. You need to put your name here. And the purpose of the program, this program will get a length and width to calculate the area, or something simple. Doesn't have to be specific. So the first thing you want to do is think to yourself, if I were asked in my math class, how do I get the area of a rectangle? If you don't know the answer to that, then of course you want to check it out. But basically, in pseudocode, the area of a rectangle is nothing more than the length times the width in there. And if we want to do the perimeter, we need to get 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. So we're going to actually do both of them, and this will demonstrate the proper way to do it. So we need, right off the bat, we need integer main, and we're missing a few things as well. So let's include IO stream. And if I could spell properly, that would be good. And we're going to include IOManip, even though we're really not going to need it in this time. IOManip allows you to format numbers into the amount of decimal places that you want. Because we're doing the area of a rectangle using integers, we're not going to get any floating points. So, but I'm going to put that in there, and we may modify the program later on to do it. So let's go and choose using namespace standard, which is definitely really not the preferred way of doing it, but in the beginning, it does make sense. So the first thing we need to do is we need 3 integers. We need the length, we need the width, and the area. So notice that they're all separate, so it makes it very easy for me to comment. and then you would put similar comments for the width and the area. So now what we need to do is we need a user prompt. So notice I've skipped a space so everything isn't all jammed up. So C out is console out, and what we're doing here is we're just saying enter the, we'll do the length first. Length of the rectangle. And notice that I'm skipping a space here, and then I've got the semicolon. So now what we need to do is get the length. Then similarly, we're going to do C out what is width. And I probably should have put a question mark here, so let's go back and do that. That's just cosmetic. So now we need to get the width. If you get some red squiggly lines when you're doing your C in, look to see if you have less than signs instead of greater than signs. I constantly do the wrong one, so it's no big deal. So now we're getting the length, now we're getting the width. We're not doing any error checking right now. We're going to do that later on. So now all we're doing is calculating the area equals, now notice I'm putting these in parentheses. It's nothing more than the length times the width. And then we'll do C out the area is, and finally we're missing one important piece, and that's the return statement. So let's run this program now, and let's see if we have any dilemmas. I'm going to run it by hitting Control 5. You can click up top here as well, and if you're Xcode, I believe it's on the top over here. So I'm going to go over here and should bring my little console up on my other window, and I'll drag it over. If you get any kind of errors, they're going to show up here, and it gives you an opportunity to fix them. So first thing we have is, let's do something very simple. The length, let's just say it's 12, and the width is 5. So it should tell us that the width is, the area is 60, if I've done it correctly. So the first time you run a program, you want to make sure that you are doing it with simple data, very easy in your head, or just get a simple calculator and check it to make sure your program works. And the area is 60. So that's good. So now I want to run the program, and I want to do something a little bit different, and let's see what happens. So let's just say that the area of the rectangle is 10, and the width is 5.5. So it should give me 55, but I claim it's going to give me 50. So let's see what happens. The length is 50. So you go, that doesn't make any sense. 10 times 5.5 is 55. And that's correct. But the problem is, if you look back at our description of width, it's an integer. So as soon as you type in 5.5, C++, Visual Studio, Xcode, whatever you're using says, hey, we only care about the 5 in there. So be very careful with that, especially if you're doing integer division. So you would have to declare the width as a float, but we're not going to worry about that right now. So now let's add one more thing, and we'll call it the perimeter. So if you look at the definition of a perimeter, it's 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. Okay, can you guys mute your things, please, so we don't have this noise? And we'll take that. So we're commenting in here. So what we're going to do here, and normally you would do that comment when you're actually doing the calculation. So we're going to do perimeter, and I'll do it here. Keep the calculations together. Perimeter equals, notice we have parentheses. So now I'm going to type 2, and I'm going to do this broken down into 2. 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. Now, while this is correct, you have to understand that it's difficult for the human eye to read this and follow. So to make it clearer and to avoid any mistakes, we're going to put parentheses times here and parentheses times there. Now, even if we didn't put the parentheses, it still would be right, because remember that addition and subtraction are after multiplication and division. So it would multiply the 2 times the length first, then 2 times the width second, and then add them together. If you recall, in one of the slides, it's going to show you exactly how we did that. So let's go and we'll put a separate line here. And we'll do C out the perimeter I knew I could spell it. Is, and then perimeter. And let's put a couple of end lines. And yes, I know you can use the /n, but the preferred method is end out. Will I take off for using /n? Probably not, but it's best to use end out. Yes, I know it's more typing, but this is actually a better, and this /n does have its ways of doing things. So let's go and see what's going on if we run this. And we'll do 5 and 10. So the length is 10 and the width is 5. So we should get 50 as the area. And then the perimeter is 30. Well, it's 2 times the length, which is 20, 2 times the width, which is 10, and that equals 30. So that looks good. So let's take a quick look at how we organize this program. So we're not using IOManip right now, but we're going to modify the program either later today or in the future, that we're going to allow something like the length to be 10.8 and the width to be 4. So right now we're using integers. So we declared all of our variables here. We put them all on separate lines separated by a comma with the exception of the last variable. We commented them, or should comment them, so you can use the length of rectangle, width of the rectangle, area of the rectangle. And I just put in here the perimeter is the 2 times the length and 2 times the width. And so then what we did was we're getting the length, we're getting the width using a user prompt. Notice no end out, so that when we got it, everything was on the same line. I've separated it with 1 space, just so here is our data input, here is our calculations, and here is the output. So the area is calculated here, the perimeter is calculated here, and we're now printing it out. It is never a good idea, at least in the beginning, to do a C out to calculate. I could have just as easily done C out, the area is, and then put in length times width. So there's 2 disadvantages to doing that. One is it's a little bit harder to debug if you make a mistake. But what happens if you're using the area in another location? Then you're going to have to calculate the same thing over and over again. So here we have it. And then, of course, I have a couple blank lines. I really don't need any more than 1. And we have our return 0. And then to be on the safe side, I recommend commenting any open, main, and opening in main. You'll find that very useful when you have a whole bunch of nested things going on and one of the braces gets accidentally deleted or not done at all. So that is it for this. And then we'll go back more and we'll make some modifications.